Welcome back to the Infinite Zero Experience. Today I am with Hamilton Sador from Blue Morpho Retreats. He's the founder of Blue Morpho Retreats, and he's also been working in the space of AI and Web3. And today we're going to be talking all about sacred plants, ayahuasca, healing, and the domain of spirituality and how that even may intersect with Web3 and AI. So welcome, Hamilton. Lovely to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So you've you've been doing you've been in the space of plant medicine, sacred plants for 24 years now. So tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get into it? What led to it? And why you decided to commit for so long to it?
Yeah, the sacred plants found me when I was young, just after college, and I was having a spiritual awakening. And that was spontaneous without the use of sacred plants. It just happened that in that awakening, I was guided to the plants. And I found myself in Peru in 2001, having my first San Pedro, also known as Wachuma and ayahuasca ceremonies, and really in pursuit at that time of finding a formal kind of training for the spiritual awakening that was happening. And I saw in my first ayahuasca ceremony visions that I was going to stay and learn from that plant and in the traditions of the people there. And I was really honored and lucky to become part of a lineage of people that were considered great mystics of the forest where I was.
Mm, that's beautiful. I had a very similar journey because at the age of 24, I stumbled across ayahuasca. I did not go there very intentionally. I was going to get high. That was my original intention. A- And the plants had a different intention for me. So it was in my second ceremony. So my first ceremony was my spiritual awakening, where I kind of had my first proper experience of dissociating from my individual consciousness and becoming one with a greater consciousness. And then the second ceremony is where the ayahuasca revealed its plans for me to work with it and to teach me the ways of sacred plants and also the whole journey of spiritual development. So I've been on it now for 10 years and look forward to what the next 14 years may bring for me.
Yeah, for
So,
me,
yeah.
I'd say just for me, it started similarly. I was shown in my first ayahuasca ceremony that I was going to stay in the location where I was, which was deep in the forest,
Mm,
isolated from, larger populations of people, and that I was going to stay there and live. And, you know, first I just thought that was impossible. Like, how can we just live out here? And so I just asked, well, how am I supposed to live out here? And I get, a very clear communication that just says, well, ask permission to live out here. So I asked
mm.
the local people, can I live out here? And they think, you sure you can live out here, here. And, uh, and so it was in those first two ceremonies that I did as well that it showed me the nature of awakening. And I saw that same concept of the first real experience beyond individualized consciousness into something much greater. And
Mhm,
also that direction that the plants had a something to teach that was really important that we needed to go deeper into.
mhm. Yeah, I imagine that 24 years back, it was a very different place, the Amazon, because there's been a lot of uh, development since then. Like now, it's a lot easier to even get there, live there. But I'm imagining 24 years back, it was very different.
Yeah, 24 years ago, especially in our area, which is in the northeastern Amazon, you get to it by the city of Iquitos. It was there was very little travel into the forest except for logging or petroleum prospecting. And so those are the two major industries in the area. And
Mm,
other than that, just people lived in the forest. It was kind of unheard of to go out there seeking the knowledge of the people. And there was no ayahuasca industry that you could point to. There were, no dedicated retreat centers. There were a few places that offered ceremonies as a tourist thing to do, but the whole notion of going on retreats and really going deep into the ceremonies or into dieta or into the culture itself didn't even really exist at that point. And it was a time of great pioneering and the opportunity to actually start to form and help create, this greater movement behind the plant medicines and the indigenous wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are one of the early pioneers of the ayahuasca industry as it is now in the Amazon. So tell us a bit about what led you to commit to making that happen and how the whole journey has unfolded since. So when you built the retreat center, how it's unfolded since then.
I started first in my own apprenticeship, and it was really interesting at that time because the people I was living with and working with were local doctors or médico vegetalistas for their communities. And so it wasn't groups of Westerners or tourists coming down and having, or international people having this experience, but rather we were sitting with people that had been doing the work in the similar way that they had been doing it for thousands of years. And I, at that time, was to support myself, taking people into the forest for tours of the forest, jungle adventure experiences, but not specifically plant medicine. And those people became very interested in the plant medicine ceremonies, like just wanting to see it, participate in it if they were allowed. And spontaneous and what looked like miraculous transformation or healing was happening for the Western people that were there sitting in and participating in these indigenous healing ceremonies. And so that was really the beginning of it. And I realized there was something very special happening. And at that time, I didn't understand it very well because it was so new to me. But I recognized something very special was happening. And I had been trained in the university as an anthropologist. And I thought that there was a need for a kind of anthropological tourism, not so much in ayahuasca industry, but in anthropological tourism to bring people to go meet these great healers in the forest and mystics in the forest that had real knowledge of something greater. Um, that ultimately led to discussions with the local government on the state level here, and then the discussions at the federal level to really standardize what could become and protect what could become the, tourism side of the plant medicine industry. And,
Mm,
there was a need to align with the Peruvian government because tourism was something very special to their economy. And there was
mm,
this, completely underutilized aspect of their cultures and indigenous cultures, which was their understanding of the medicinal natures of the plants and the support that they could provide. And it just happened at that time. It was kind of a historic thing that there was the first real Western recognition of a huge need around mental health. So
mhm,
this was the beginning of the mass and big pharma medication for mental health across Western Europe and the United States. And so, it created a kind of perfect scenario that it turned out that the plant medicines were really powerful at helping people with these mental health issues. And the Peruvian government had a strong structure for tourism that tourism, the medicinal plants, and people in need could find a way to come together.
So how long were you doing your apprenticeship and then transitioned into leading and building your center?
The building of the center was earlier because I functioned really as a guide and a bridge
Mm,
for our clients to the healers that I was working with.
mm,
And so for me, the center started very early when we recognized that there was a way to be able to create that bridge for people to come and meet them and experience the plant medicine ceremonies. So the center was formed in 2002, 2003. By 2004, it was really dedicated to plant medicine. For me personally, my apprenticeship lasted a very short period of time formally. It was just around 2 years. And then I started what they call a maturation phase, which was very long.
mm,
So I went through a very short, very acute formal apprenticeship. and then I was allowed to hold ceremonies on my own. But the maturation phase that they call it of that lasted another I would say 12 to 13 years, and I'm not sure when or if it'll ever be over. So in terms of
Yeah,
training,
yeah.
right? In terms of training, it's been ongoing now for about 14 years.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely resonate with that because my apprenticeship, like there was no formal graduation to, so to speak, other than me deciding that okay, I'm ready to graduate. For me, that's how my apprenticeship looked like. I was with my mentor for a period of 8 years. And in between that, I was already moving more and more and more into leadership. And after those 8 years, it felt like, okay, now I'm ready for my own journey outside on my own path. So I worked at a retreat center for 8 years and was co-leading ceremonies there. And now I've transitioned into also a different type of work where I'm taking the teachings from ayahuasca and helping others to live from that mindset, from that level of consciousness.
Yeah, I think
So,
that's beautiful.
and you told me before we started that you also have some kind of academy and mystery school. So how does that play into all of this?
The Blue Morpho Academy and Mystery School came about because the neo-shamanic revolution, which was really the great reawakening of interest in the medicinal plants and indigenous wisdom schools, kept growing into what's now global proliferation and awakening around the use of psychedelic medicines. And when I looked at the kind of growing movement, I thought that the nature of cultivation and really the creation of the substances itself was going to be standardized, but the big miss, so it wasn't going to be a lack of you know psychedelics or plant medicines, but there would be a lack of trained people that would
Mm,
know how to be able to support. So I saw a report from ICERS that said that they had over 4 million doses of ayahuasca were served last year. And
mhm,
then in the world, and I thought, I don't know how many psilocybin doses there are, but it's got to be 100 times that of ayahuasca. And
mhm,
that it was just going to grow and grow and grow to the point that if you looked at just 1% of the people wanting professional support, help, guides, coaches, etc., that there wouldn't be those people in the world that would have the knowledge base. And so it was
mm,
another one of those perfect storms where because of the regulation against these plants for so long, there hasn't been a growing number of really trained or qualified people to know how to wield them. And so that's been suppressed for so long. There's going to be a great lack of people trained for this. And so I started the academy to create certification programs for sitters and coaches, facilitators, and master
mhm,
facilitators of all the different kinds of medicinal plants that are visionary. And then the mystery school really came from those students asking for a way to stay in community and for their own spiritual growth and development, continue to pursue uh, the great mystery, which I think is a union of us and spirituality. So no one
mhm,
really has answers for all the great questions about the
mhm,
universe. So
mhm,
that is the mystery that we're all trying to embark on and discover together. And so we teach a framework for safety and really like a focused form of like structure and path for the
mhm,
visionary experience. We try to provide a universal structure we call sanctuary, and that
mhm,
universal structure is a safe way for people to explore this great mystery. And then we describe everything within that structure, which is your unique form of spirituality, as your art. And
mhm,
so we think of how to bring a structure to plant medicine and a structure to the psychedelic exploration that goes deeper than just set and setting. It really goes into a much deeper framework for how to maintain a sacred space and how to
mhm,
ensure your own safety and well-being. And then from that point, how do you develop your spiritual arts, your unique spiritual connection, your universal understandings and wisdom, and how do you learn the techniques that are used by the shamanic people and the ancestral people to navigate the different realms of consciousness, including the realms of spirit, in a way that's actually really meaningful and helpful, supportive, and most importantly, helping somebody gain the tools they need to better live their lives.
Mm. That's beautiful. And it's also extremely aligned with the way I approach plants and spiritual growth because one of the main topics I was focusing on in my apprenticeship was the whole safety and trust topic. Because I feel like this is the foundation of a profound experience is when you feel safe and you can trust the people that you're working with. And I feel like that's one of the key missing ingredients in most people's experiences when you were describing that, there are 4 million um, ceremonies or doses being administered. And even if we think 5% of them are facilitated by someone with experience, the remaining 95% of them don't have that. And it really becomes like a, like a gambling game of like, it can go well and it may not. So, and I feel like that definitely expands to the whole spiritual experience because even when it comes to practices such as Kundalini, which can be very intense and extreme, anything to do with going beyond the individual, I think there's so little education around that, and it gets mostly replaced by fear that it's dangerous, it's bad, this something will go wrong. But that's one of my primary intentions is to make people realize that you can do it in a very safe way. And when you do it in a safe way, it's very beautiful and it's very profound and extremely useful. Because the way I see it, that this really is one of the only ways forward. There is no excluding spirituality from the future of humanity. It's like the way the pharmaceutical industry is going, or the way these industries are going, which are just trying to repress and numb the symptoms, is absolutely unsustainable. The only way forward is for us to come into deep connection with ourselves and bring ourselves to harmony, ourselves to balance. And one of the paths for that is sacred plants, but also there are many other paths. As long as we keep realizing and remembering that it is all about having that deep connection, coming into our authenticity, and being able to live ourselves fully.
Yeah, I think the impossibility of separating spirit is a unique time in history where people have decided to act like it doesn't exist instead of embracing the fact that they're using spirit to act like it doesn't exist. And so there's this kind of fundamental foundation that people have been able to just dissociate from or deny in their own belief system, while it's by those from the spiritual community who have studied know that it's an omnipresent phenomena of the universe. And I agree with the idea of the fact that it's not sustainable to maintain this going, line of thinking. And I don't think it's meant to be sustained either. I think it's kind of like an evolutionary offshoot. I see the plants behind you, and I just think to
Mhm,
myself that those
mhm,
plants are doing just fine. They're evolving continuously, regardless of
mhm,
what humans are doing. Humans are making a great impact on the environment right now, but it's not a unilateral impact. And
mhm,
so Earth has a unique way of evolving in the face of stresses. So humans
mhm,
providing stress create evolution in another direction that we're not even
mhm,
aware of. And I see that right now in the great pursuit of technologies that can ultimately out-evolve human from all of their roles. And so I think it's really, unique to see that right now we understand that humans are denying spirit and they're denying in industry fundamental aspects of being alive, being part of Earth, and being part of the universe. But at the same time, that's taking them to an inevitable zero point where they're creating their own obsolescence.
mhm,
So as they continue to remove themselves from the equation of importance, at the same time, they're naturally diverting themselves away from that path. And so I think in the long run, you give it 10, 15, 20, 100 years, which is still a very short period of time of human history. And you start to see that humans inevitably will come back to a more spiritual or holistic understanding, just like there were great ebbs and flows of all different times.
Hmm. That's a beautiful point. Like the, and I will bring something that's come up recently in several contexts for me, that the more we reject the spirit, like the spirit also rejects us and will wipe us out, because we have to remember that who is more powerful. Like it's our like it's I feel like it's this great human delusion that we are all powerful, whereas there is something way beyond. And bringing it into the context of, like, the Greek myths, it's where the god and the goddess were creating life. And as long as the flow was maintained, everything was great. But the moment the masculine god tried to control and say, I reject this, which happened in the first generation with the Titans, where the moment there was something which was not acceptable to the masculine god, it tried to destroy that creation. And the feminine, which I would see as a spirit, is like, you don't get to control this. And if you do control this, I will eliminate you. And that's like, it's three generations in Greek mythology which describe the same story, that you cannot control evolution, you cannot control life, you cannot control what the spirit intends. So that's one of my core teachings, is how do we stay in flow with spirit? How do we keep evolving while playing our part to co-create life? That's that's how I see the dance between the masculine and the feminine. We are co-creators, perfect co-creators, not one stronger than the other. Each needs the other, but one cannot dominate and control the other. So I would love to go a bit deeper into this. Like, how do you help people navigate coming from a very rational or mental scientific background and coming into this world? Because I've, in my experience, seen some people can have a lot of resistance to open up, even open up to these concepts. Forget accepting them. Like, even opening up to the idea of something beyond me can be unacceptable, because deep down it's really scary. It's intimidating to think that I am not the one who's in control, or we are not the ones who are in control of everything.
One of the, I think, beauties of working with the plants is that the plants have a natural way of helping somebody see beyond that bubble. And something I like to try to share with people is that whether you believe in something or not doesn't mean whether it exists or not.
Mhm.
The existence of something is irrespective of your belief in it. And also, whether something exists or not doesn't mean that it's been explained to you in a way that you resonate with or understand. And that
Mhm.
doesn't also change whether it exists or not. And so, I had one conversation recently with somebody about spirits that didn't understand the idea of spirit at all. And I said to them, like, I'm not concerned whether this implicitly exists somewhere outside of where it can be found, nor am I concerned with does the phenomena exist the way it's being told.
Mhm.
But I said to them right now, do you think that there are people that are praying to Hindu deities? Like, are people right now praying to Ganesha and Shiva? And he said, yeah. And I said, right now, are people praying to Christ? And he said, yeah. So I said, are people right now praying with Buddhas? And he said, yeah. And I go, well, aren't those thought forms in people's consciousness because they're doing that? I said, maybe that's enough to start with. Maybe they exist beyond that. Maybe they don't. Let's go find out. But we can go find the power or importance of what these people are believing in. And that was one way to get to a concrete location and consciousness that he could understand, different to the stories that he had been told about those concepts. But on a more universal perspective, I think that I try to describe the phenomena of spirit and the phenomena of source in the terms of science
Mhm.
so that people can understand what we're really talking about. when I don't think that there is a bifurcation or a separation between science and spirituality. So first is that anything animated at all, any animus, any expression of animus comes from spirit. So do you think does that comes from spirit? Do you do you have an understanding that comes from spirit? Do you have an impetus to go eat? That comes from spirit. Do you have an impetus for thirst to drink? That comes from spirit. Do the plants grow by themselves? Is there a life force? That comes from spirit. Are there sounds in the forest? That comes from spirit. So spirit is a term, not in the spiritual definition or the scientific definition. Spirit is a term to describe all forms of animus, all forms of animated existence. I said, maybe animated existence only exists of Earth. Maybe it exists in many places, but there's enough of it existing here of Earth. There's enough of it existing within ourselves to understand that there's some phenomena here that we can call spirit, right? That phenomena is worthy of a kind of greater understanding. And then I try to describe the phenomena of source or the phenomena of God or the phenomena of like great soul. There are many words to try to describe this in it itself. So I think it's strange that we came up with a mythology that describes a creator of the universe independent from the universe. So I say,
Hmm.
if there is a creator of the universe, the creator of the universe created the universe in itself. So where we are is within that creation, not external to it. And where we are is within the nature of the dimensionality of source. So every place where science would describe universe, I make universe equate God or universe equate source as an understanding.
Hmm.
So, where are the galaxies? Within the universe, within God. Where, what are galaxies? Another expression of source, another expression of God. And then that
Hmm.
helps people relate those understandings that there's something primordial to our beliefs that our beliefs are trying to point to and bring reference to. And that helps people start to bridge that gap from the bubble of me, just that tiny, tiny little bubble that seems so big, to an idea of something greater.
Hmm.
When we approach that something greater, what I try to describe and share with somebody is that the reason why it's scary to step outside of the bubble of me is because the awareness of me is so young within us. But the
Hmm.
beingness having that awareness is very old.
Hmm.
The beingness, the soul, or the spirit of us that is having this awareness of me right now that seems separate, that seems isolated, that seems differentiated from everything else. It seems it's only 20, 30, 40 years old. It seems so small compared to the rest of the universe, is actually just an awareness we have that has developed for a very short period of time. And so we have to go beyond that. And I like to journey into that in the plant medicine, into the who we were before we were born, what we've been doing for hundreds of thousands, millions, billions of years. Try to open up the nature of our time and timeline to understand ourselves in a more universal nature.
Hmm. Yeah, so I took several points from that. One, I love I have a similar way of saying what you said is that reality, thankfully, reality is not conditional upon your beliefs. It's that thankfully, really, because what would the world be if reality had to conform to our beliefs? And I really loved what you added that it's also not conditional upon how someone has explained it to you. And that is very powerful and profound that just because someone's explanation doesn't resonate for you, don't settle for the opposite or for denial. Look for other explanations that will touch your soul in a way that will connect you to the truth directly. And what I also loved is that there is there is fear. I think the first thing, the most important thing for people to recognize is that the this denial, like first is to recognize that there is denial, or like I want to reject this belief. I want to reject the idea that there is something bigger. If you can just first acknowledge that why do I want to reject this? And then come deeper into that and realize, okay, there is a fear. And the way to move forward from the fear is the curiosity. I love that the way you described is curiosity. It's like, okay, let's start with this foundational belief or this foundational thought, and then let's explore what happens with it. Let's just play with it. And once we start playing with it, engaging with it in this curious way, somehow the fear also diminishes because we are more in play mode. When we are not in fear and we are in play, we are in curiosity, somehow things become easier and it becomes less intimidating. And eventually, I think is like the key is surrender. Is like at some point you have to surrender to the mystery which your mind will never understand. Like there is also that realization that how does the universe create itself? You will never get it, and you don't have to get it. Some parts of reality are just meant to be experienced, to have fun, to enjoy, to keep trying to figure it out. That also is the game, and to just keep playing the game instead of getting into this very rigid and concrete certainty of I know how reality functions. I know this is not true. I know that is not real. It's like just let go, like loosen up a bit, play a bit, have fun in life. So that's like one of my fundamental aspects of my teachings is how to enjoy life with everything that is going on. How do you actually enjoy life fundamentally? And even to make people realize that you can enjoy life, that just because there's so much shit going on in the world, just because the world has gone dark for a moment, doesn't mean you have to get sucked into it. There's still a way to enjoy life, there's still a way to play, there's still a way to grow and evolve and help humanity to heal while having fun. It doesn't have to become this whole serious and heavy ordeal. There are so many approaches. The serious path is only one way. There are many other ways to go about it too.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The idea of the darkness spreading to people just in a dystopian narrative and mindset is the darkness. So you can't differentiate this darkness isn't dark and that darkness is darker. Like the darkness is a mindset, it's an emotional state, it's a vibratory state, it's a resonant state, it's an action, it's a continuous ritual that people are playing out. It's a kind of dark age that we're in. But the place that I see the darkness most insidious is in the self-created thoughts and the self-created delusions about it. And
Mhm,
it's a fear program within us or a fear paradigm that, the more brought down we get by that, I don't know, the more separated we feel from it. But I want to explain that that is it. Like you can be an incredibly spiritual person, very upset all the time about the dystopian narrative that's going on in the planet, and the darkness has found its way into you.
mhm.
Right. And so I love that idea that you're sharing, that there's a way to recognize life that is transcendent of that. And from that mindset, affect the change and be the change that you want to make in the world and do it from a place that's actually, of a higher vibration.
Yeah, this is really my core teaching is where you're operating from. Just fix that first. Everything else smooths out because what I have seen in my own, and this really has been from my own journey because over 10 years, I can say that I spent up until now, those 10 years, 95% of it was from a place of darkness.
Hmm.
It's really only in the last 6 to 8 months that something started shifting. And I started realizing that all of the healing work, if you do it from the place that you're broken, that the world is messed up, that everything is going wrong, and there's something wrong with me which needs to be fixed. If you're healing yourself from that place, you're pretty much never going to heal. because your fundamental idea of yourself is that I am broken, I'm imperfect. But if we can start with healing that first, that you are fine, being imperfect, being wounded, being traumatized is fine. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. If you can start from there and you can just say that even with this state, I can enjoy life, then what we are doing is we are just growing a capacity to enjoy life with each day. You heal more, you enjoy more, but fundamentally, you are enjoying life. And if you can come there, I think then life just becomes so different because you can see that, okay, the world is not broken. The world is what it is. There is a light side, there is a dark side. People are enjoying life, people are celebrating, and there are some dark things going on. But we can keep bringing balance, we can keep harmonizing, we can keep healing the world from a place where, okay, things are fine. It's not the end of the world. Like this whole apocalyptic mindset that a lot of people are buying into more and more and more, it's quite unnecessary. Even if it is the apocalypse, you can enjoy it. There's no mandate that you have to suffer in the apocalypse. Why is that the mandate?
It's the nature of the apocalypse itself to spread an apocalyptic propaganda.
Exactly. It's like you can truly come into the mindset that whatever is happening in life, life is enjoyable. And also you can realize that you can suffer in heaven. There are people who suffer in paradise. There are people who can be ultra rich, but they are full of suffering. Is really to break the conditionality of enjoying life and suffering. Both can be done no matter what the conditions are. And if you can understand that fundamental principle, I think for me that has been the biggest shift. And then
Mm.
everything just lightens up.
When you were working at the plant medicine center, did a lot of people find the light through the use of the plant medicines?
I would say a lot is too relative. So I would like if we have to put it into numbers, I would say it's kind of eventually everyone did get there because of the way we were facilitating things. But a lot of the focus also was on like that's one of the reasons I decided to move on was that there was too much of an emphasis on healing and being broken and finding out what's wrong with you instead of like, okay, let's help you to grow. Let's help you because that's kind of the teachings that started coming to me from ayahuasca. And then it started kind of clashing with the way things were functioning there. So people would eventually find light, but I don't think that this fundamental shift happened of realizing that inherently you are fine. Inherently you are light, you are love, you are perfect in your way. I think that ratio was much lesser, but people did find their way to joy. What I did realize is that many of the people, after going back, would slip back into old patterns and paradigms. And I think the reason for that, I narrowed it down to this fundamental shift not taking place.
Yeah, I found in the plant medicine that in the general industry, there's a real focus on all the things that are wrong and trying to find the rational reason for why the things are wrong and trying to break apart the broken thing to understand more about the broken thing, which seemed to me like a very psychological direction, talk therapy direction of to try to find more mental understanding for the nature of it. And what I really appreciated about plant medicine when I first got around it was about purging whatever was broken without even having to know what it is. That you would go into the plant medicine, you would do 2 or 3 ceremonies to purge whether it was darkness or trauma or physical illness or lower resonant vibrations or blockages, et cetera. It wouldn't matter. The ayahuasca would help somebody purge those. The dieta would help somebody purge those energies. And it would heal you from an energy basis first. And after a certain period of time, the local people would just say, I'm healed,
Mhm.
not I'm healing forever and broken forever. Just I'm healed. 3 ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm healed. 4 ayahuasca ceremonies, I'm healed. And I've seen a culture starting to form of both needing forever ceremonies and forever identifying with being somehow broken. And that's why I ask how many, people you saw really find the light and move beyond that, because I loved it that early on I saw people really quote unquote heal from depression. They would come with clinically diagnosed depression and they would leave and not need medication again in their life. So they would come from medication and then they would no longer be on medication. But this kind of westernized concept of a spiritual illness has sort of appeared that I also find to be a social cultural illness in the West, is that there's just something profoundly sick about the nature of the culture that's out of balance, the foods that people eat, the ways that they spend time in entertainment, et cetera, that represents kind of that dystopian narrative, has a kind of inherent illness in it. And then this idea that they're somehow like diseased from it forever, or traumatized forever, or life didn't work out the way they thought it was supposed to work out, so that now there's this kind of perpetual need for healing. And I've really witnessed it in the last 10 or 15 years start to form in a big way. And I don't ascribe to that belief. I don't think we need to heal forever. I think you get your healing and then you move on. And in our lineage, it was described as you heal and then you learn.
Mm,
So first, you come with whatever, you heal it. It's a short period of time. It might
mm,
take a couple weeks, it might take a couple months, but you heal it. Now you're healed. Now you have to learn. And that's the spiritual development, spiritual growth part. You find the light, you grow into the light, etc. You develop wisdom. You go through many, many evolutions of developing your wisdom.
absolutely. Yeah, I call it healing and growth.
Hmm.
And for me, even like, to some extent, there are like if someone wants to argue on the point of healing forever, I'm like, even growth is healing forever. If it really depends where you're doing it from. You can say that if I'm not in my infinite potential, there is something that still needs to be healed. Okay, true. But if you do it from the place of I'm fundamentally fine and I'm growing my infinite potential, rather than I'm fundamentally broken trying to fix myself, it can change completely what your journey looks like and feels like. Your whole inner experience of life changes. And I feel like this also very much goes to the what you said, like the way clinical depression is treated. A lot of the times they say that there is no cure for depression. There is literally untreatable depression. There are, and then if you step into addiction, that's a whole paradigm that literally is terminal. Like if you go into 12-step programs or all of these programs, they basically say you have to accept that you are an addict for life. And that whole identity and identification with the addiction is literally what needs to break if someone is to heal. And that can happen very quickly. Is for people to realize that that is just an identity. And there's a whole other identity available in which you're essentially saying, I'm fine. And yeah, I am very glad to hear that, we are in resonance. And I'm guessing that's how we also found each other. And that's where this conversation is taking place, is to bring light to this shadow in the spiritual industry and the addiction industry and so many industries that basically also the way I have seen it is that a lot of the counselors, facilitators, whatever you want to call them, coaches, they themselves have not found that.
Hmm.
And so they're teaching, they're healing, they're practicing from that place of themselves feeling broken, trying to fix other people. And yeah, like this shadow I feel needs a lot more light in the world today.
I've often wondered if the lack of capacity to truly bring healing was a lack of the tools necessary. So I thought in the 12-step program, we started to receive people at Blue Morpho that were addicts very early. And we
Mhm.
found that they would transcend their addiction and the identity with the addiction, usually within 1 or 2 weeks of treatment.
Mm.
And there'd be a very consistent arc There would be a resistance at first, then there would be a tremendous purge,
Mm.
like an unbelievable purge. And people would come out of it saying that they felt like out of their cells, the addiction was stripped from them. Like, and I thought that the substances, the consumption of the molecules, it wasn't just an addiction in the sense of when I was high, but it was an addiction to a vibration that was created by being high. And that the molecules create it. So there's like a unique relationship between the imprint of the molecules and that resonance within somebody. And so
Mm.
that would stay in the body, and you would see it when you would go into vision in ayahuasca that one person who had that resonance compared to a person who had never taken the drugs didn't have that resonance. And I would see the energy patterns and the great fractals and the multidimensional patterning rewrite that within somebody as it was just purging it out of them. And then, very much to the 12-step program, there would be a great spiritual awakening. There'd be a
Mm.
recognition of a petition to a real external source of support and help, and a receptivity to it, the actual ability to receive it in a great spiritual awakening. And then, over the next days or weeks of that spiritual awakening would be ultimately the recognition that the person was no longer an addict, that they had actually
Mm.
transcended that. But I recognized that from the 12-step program, they didn't have ayahuasca nor the knowledge of the healing cultures that sat behind it. And I
Mhm.
noticed that it wasn't just serve somebody ayahuasca like serve somebody aspirin. It wasn't an over-the-counter drug. It
Yeah.
was a substance that was guided by somebody who had real knowledge in how to be able to create that pattern overriding within their body, the ability to purge that energy or that spirit of the drugs out of them. There was like a real specific practice, and the healers I was
Mm.
working with, the medico vegetalistas, knew it. They are like, oh, well, that person's been on those substances. Those aren't good for them. Here, take this. And it was like a cleansing with the plants. They knew exactly every step that they were describing
Mm.
that they would take them through. And this is where I started to think of the Amazonian plant medicine as its own real form of medicine, very much like Qigong is a kind of medicine, or
Mhm.
Ayurvedic medicine, or Chinese medicine and Western medicine. There was this Amazonian plant medicine that only recently had really been discovered and really needed it, necessitated its own uh, category, and then study and understanding.
Mm. Yeah, it's very deep, and I do think, like, with ayahuasca, from my experience, it basically gives a very direct interface to working with the energy of a person. But I think that there are many spiritual masters and teachers who have also found other ways to do it, to access the energy directly. But I think mainly it's coming down to what you're saying, is that the facilitator needs to be able to hold that energy frequency where the rewrite can take place. And for that, they need to be someone who has found that I am fine, I am whole, I am complete, I am not broken fundamentally. I think, essentially, if people, one of the things people can take from this video is that, does your facilitator, does your coach, does your therapist have a fundamental self view that they are whole and they are complete? Are they holding that frequency? Are they emanating that frequency in their daily life? Or in a session, they seem super proper, but the rest of their life is completely falling apart. That's a very common pattern too. And a lot of the people are also in this, a lot of the facilitators and teachers, therapists are so much in the scarcity mindset that they need to keep their patients, their clients broken. Like, there is this whole complex of the shining complex. Like, if the patients or clients start shining too much, they have to cut them off. They have to cut their power off. And it's a real phenomenon that a lot of people suffer from, that the therapist will start projecting on them, like, oh, you're being too egoistic, you're being too narcissistic, you need to calm down, you need to be more humble, to more grounded. And it's like, if really someone is in their power, they can see their client shine even more than them. They can see people growing more than them, leading stronger than them. And again, like, I feel like these are just codes which come from the other side of reality, which is the abundant reality. So there is the scarcity fear reality, which is like everything is limited. we are broken, something is wrong. And then there is the wholeness and abundance reality where it's like, yeah, there's enough for everyone. We are all good and we can have more.
The abundance mentality is, I think, a universal perspective. And there's the nature of that dark dystopian narrative that's trying to tell you that everything's scarce. And if you count, if you look at the world through that eyes, you can see how it makes sense to think that way. You know, if you start to look at the entire system as one universal system, that mindset starts to break down and fall away. Right?
Exactly. Hmm.
The scarcity system cannot be true in a universe that continuously is creating. Scarcity can't be true in an earth that's continuously creating new life. It's continuously creating new food. But if you force
Exactly.
everybody to live on tiny little pieces of land in ways that have no ability to produce their own food, and then you tell them they have to work, work, work for something that doesn't produce their basic necessities, and they have to buy everything for their basic necessities, it makes that mindset seem very real. But I consider that a great illusion.
Absolutely. It's like if we can truly tap into this infinite creativity of the universe, which is again what is available when you go out of the fear of something greater like the spirit. If you stop seeing that, oh, it's me versus the spirit, which is infinitely greater, instead of it's me with this infinite potentiality, this infinite inspiration, infinite creativity. It's like there is actually no problem. I call it problem consciousness. It's like you're literally stuck in problem consciousness where you keep looking for why something is not working, what's wrong, how to fix it. There is no problem. You can literally just create. You can just be in creativity and keep evolving, keep progressing. That's the nature of the universe, is that the universe doesn't get stuck on a problem of how do I send more energy from the sun to the earth. Those problems don't exist.
One of the things I like to share in the mystery school with the students is how to align with source and with spirit.
Hmm.
And it makes no sense to me that you would align against the universe or you would align against spirit. It also makes no sense to me, even if you don't believe, that you wouldn't want the help of spirit if it existed. You would still want to be aligned. Like, I don't believe in it, but if it exists at all, let's be in alignment. It's like a sailboat trying to go against the wind. Makes no sense at all, you know? And I think you have to learn how to ultimately align with that. And the mindset of a life to be aligned, I think, has a certain level of sensibility to it, you know, because it's simply of the needs of being alive. But I still think that's a very small mindset compared to that of our soul in terms of an eternal existence within the nature of the relationship with source and spirit. You would think you want to get aligned as soon as you can, and be aligned forever, not for just a finite period of time.
And I think one of the things to break out of is, as you were speaking that part, it's like people like the whole spirituality mindset is so influenced also by religion of like, oh, if I'm aligning with spirit is to go to heaven. Like it's not about heaven. It's about life right here. You're living an abundant, wholesome, healthy, happy life here in the flow with the spirit. You're not doing good things to get to heaven later. That's not the purpose of spirituality. It's like is to have a great time right here. And that again is it's not transactional. It's not you're not in a transaction with the universe, someone keeping an account of okay, this is spirituality is like how good you have been and how bad you have been. I feel like that is such an immature spirituality where there's so much more space for humanity as a whole to mature our spirituality as well.
Think of that as like spiritual accounting. There's an actual spiritual ledger out there. I think one of the things that we have to claim is our spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
not accept somebody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And, one of the things I like to teach about God is that whether or not somebody else believes in God or another institution describes God, that doesn't remove God from your own personal relationship. And the same thing about spirit. So I don't think spirituality or God is inherently religious. I think religions were formed around the fact that there was an understanding of spirituality and God. And so I don't think we can ever let an institution separate us from the nature of our true understandings. And so it's a responsibility within ourselves to embrace that and embrace the understanding that spirit is with us all the time. And it's how we want to relate to that fundamental aspect of the universe that's already inside us. And then from that, as you say, create or co-create the life that we can with the tools and the abundance that we have all the time.
Yeah. It's if we can see that the the religion, the spirituality, it's what others are describing is so, again, just speaking to us at the mental level. And I think one of the most important things that happened for me, because as I was describing before I came in, I was more into drugs. I was coming to get high. And also I had no interest in spirituality and religion. I was coming from India. I lived for 21 years in India. And what it did to me was put a hard wall between me and anything to do with religion and spirituality. And the biggest gift I got was the space to explore my relationship with spirit, with source, whatever you want to call it, my own spirituality. I just got the space to explore that without someone trying to drill down that this is what it is and tell me what it is. And so my approach is always to create space for people. It's like I can give you my opinions, I can guide you, I can help you to see your shadow and give some checks when you may be slipping into something which is out of resonance and alignment, even with yourself. But really, like the journey is yours, and you need to have space to explore that. And so that's what I see as a sacred space is that's one of the elements is just to have the space for you to come into your authenticity, because that was one of the big challenges I faced was that it's I used to be very influential. So I would always take on other people's energy. And so really like finding myself, having my space to discover what is my spirituality, what is my style of leadership, what is my way of working with ayahuasca, all of it was so different from anything I had been taught before. And just like, okay, like you have someone guiding you, but that doesn't mean you have to become like them. You don't have to become like your teacher. You have to come into your own power, your own authenticity.
I think it's impossible to be like your teacher. I saw so many people come down and try to copycat it, right? But it's actually an
Mhm.
impossibility to do that.
Mhm.
And I used to think of it like a cover band. There's the
Mhm.
band that created the music, and then there's a cover band. And some are really good, but they're still not the original creation. And I thought of that in this is that you can learn the thoughts and ideas, but you have to assimilate them into your own understanding. And then you have to
Mhm.
go with that. And the greatest gift is that we're not the same, is that every single person is completely unique. And so they should express that differently. That's why in the mystery school and in the academy, we call that part the art. So we all work with the same spirit. Everyone has a unique, different expression of spirit, but spirit is universal to all. But how you express that is your art. What's sacred to you and the way you express that sacredness is your art. the tools and techniques that you use to express that and represent that as your art. Some people love a lot of ritual, and some people like very little. Some people want a lot of nature, and some people want to be in a controlled environment. And so I think that that's where you get this beauty and the ability to express such a universal concept like spirit in so many different forms.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's for me that transition happened last year where it was in the middle of an ayahuasca ceremony where I kind of received this voice telling me that up until now you've been a teacher and now you're graduating into a master and your role is to help pull out the individuality of people and help them to embody it. Whereas earlier as a teacher, it was more teaching what I have learned. Now it's more about the other. It's about bringing them into their wholeness, bringing them into their absolute authenticity. So I love that whole balance of structure and art. It's exactly how I see it because the guide, the facilitator is there to provide that structure for you to blossom within that.
Outside of ayahuasca, what tools do you use to help somebody find that deep authenticity? In ayahuasca, the power of the ceremony can often help somebody reach that point of absolute honesty with themselves. And I've seen people wrestle within themselves in the visions until they can finally come to that place. What other tools have you found to be powerful for helping somebody find authenticity?
Hmm. I would describe it as two things. One is ayahuasca itself. Like for me, when I'm working, I am channeling the energy of ayahuasca. And along with that, I feel like one of my gifts is to channel the higher self of the other person or the authentic self of the other person. So I kind of become a mirror of themselves confronting themselves, which kind of is like what ayahuasca does too, in my opinion. It's like you're forced to look at your authentic self and be like, why wouldn't you want to embrace? That's one of the tools I use, and like in a coaching kind of setting. And the second I would say is the frequency of authenticity. It's like me just being as authentic and genuine as I can be is again a very powerful tool. It's like if I'm holding that frequency in a space, it it's inevitable that people will like what I've experienced is that people basically just start it starts bubbling up. All of their programs just start bubbling up when they're in that space. It's like some kind of energy work is happening through me. Like I see myself more as a channel when I'm working. It's like I'm just allowing that energy to flow through and whatever needs to bubble up, release, purge, it happens. Many times, not many times, sometimes there are purges which are even physical without taking any ayahuasca or anything. It's like sometimes I am purging because it's just like the energy is so intense. So that's what the ayahuasca was teaching me is just to hold space and to channel energy, channel certain frequencies that can help people to calibrate into authenticity.
Amazing. The idea of purging being energy, I think, is really important to talk about because I'm seeing in this space a lot of people that are fixated on the idea of vomiting.
Mhm. Please elaborate because I would, I know
Yeah, and
it's a big topic.
they feel that if they don't vomit, it's not working. Or they
Mhm.
think if they don't defecate, it's not working, or they've heard that you must purge in that way. But that the understanding of purging that we were taught is the energetic release. And the energetic release is all the time. So you're releasing with the breath, you're releasing sweating, you're releasing sometimes through shaking, you release through the nervous system, and that you only need to throw up if there's something physical that needs to actually come out, and that it's a sacred process. And then there are also people that are scared that say, oh, I don't want to interact with the plant medicines because I don't want to do something that's going to make me sick. And they don't understand that the plant medicines don't make you sick. They think that plant medicine has something in it that's toxic, that's making them sick. But it actually isn't that way. It's the nature of the energy within them that when it builds up too much, then they don't have a way to be able to raise their resonance, or they actually have something in them that needs to come out that that's the time when they purge and that it's actually something very sacred.
Absolutely. I think there's such a like because like vomiting especially is so associated with alcohol abuse. People think it's one and the same. It's like, oh, I'm drinking ayahuasca and I'm vomiting, and I'm drinking alcohol and I'm vomiting. Both are bad in a way, but it's so different you couldn't even explain it to someone who hasn't gone through that experience. That also many times you drink ayahuasca and you don't purge at all, and that's fine. And if you do purge, that's fine. And it's beautiful. And many times I've just been in awe of seeing something that's coming out that is just, and the relief that's experienced after that, this space of like not even realizing that how much that toxicity was in me and affecting me and how heavy it was to carry that and what life looks like now that I'm free of it and how great it feels to be without something so toxic. And many times the purges are even emotional. Even if something physical is coming out, actually what you're really purging is this deep emotion which has been trapped inside you and you've not been able to process it for years or decades. So it's like if again, people can get out of this rigidity of what they associate purging with and just see that there can be a much bigger story around that, a much healthier, a much more divine story around that, that it's helping you to come into connection with the divine. It's only eliminating anything that is in the way of your connection with the divine.
Yeah, over the years, we've been seeing that it's actually now taking people longer to get through that phase. And I think it has a lot to do with the environmental toxins that people come with.
Mm,
That in the last 20 years, the world's becoming more and more toxic. And
mm,
before, the purging would be first night and second night of purging would be more around just like you say, the energy, the emotion. But now it does seem like there's some kind of actual, real physical release of something that's coming out of almost everybody coming. And I just thought to myself, what an incredible gift it is that you could drink plants and that they could filter this out of you. We don't have a way yet to test or study exactly what it is, if it's hydrocarbons or microplastics or, I think
mm,
it's related to those kinds of pollutants or,
mm,
petrochemical fertilizers and things like that in the food. But there is
mm.
this vibration that's in the space that's stronger now, group after group after group, that wasn't there 20 years ago with as much proliferation or much expression. And it does seem to be
That's
this kind of heavier energy.
that's fascinating for you to even have observed that progression over 20 years. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the world is way more intense. Even like I feel if you're since we are talking about energy, like even the technological influence on humans, the amount of energy that we're taking in from cell phones, like there's so much radiation that
Mm,
we're taking in, which also at some level it is settling into your cells, into your body, into your energy field. And I definitely feel like all of that gets purged. And the way I understand energy is that the more it comes in, the denser it becomes. It also starts solidifying. Like that's a
mm,
lot of links to cancer and things like that. The more toxins you're taking, they just keep getting denser until the point that it becomes matter. Energy
yeah.
becomes matter. That's literally the universe by concentrating into a space.
Mm. Yeah, I think it comes coming through the body and it's definitely affecting it. I like to think of the body from the scientific perspective of cells and molecules and atoms and subatomic and quantum. And when I think about that, I think at the subatomic, you are electrons.
Hmm.
Like the same electrons that the computer is spewing, the same electrons from the lights, the same electrons that's running in all the currents of all the electrical systems. That's what we're actually made of. And I think people forget, they abstract the concept of energy to something beyond that of what we also have studied tremendously within the nature of our
Hmm.
physics. And the devices give off waves and they're right around us that weren't there of different frequencies and hertz. That's a consistency that wasn't there before. And I think
Hmm.
that's the same phenomenon when you go hug a tree and you feel the vibration of the tree, or you're with a pet and you feel the vibration of the pet. I think
Hmm.
we're talking about the same thing, just between alive beings and inanimate objects. And you can go to
Absolutely.
a place and you're like, God, I really love the vibe of this place, or a place in nature that really feels good to you, and it has become a certain way. And it represents, if you think about it, like from a visionary state, it's a field of electrons. It's a field of quantum, and you're inside the nature of that field. It's not so object separated the way we typically see with our eyes. And that of course is going to have an impact on us. We're actually a very tiny, the body is a very tiny part of our environment that we're in all the time. And I think we forget about that. I think we think of ourselves as like hardened, or many of us think of ourselves as like these hardened objects that are just walking
Hmm.
around, not recognizing that we are this porous energy being, and as you say, the creation of the universe coming into matter and form. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what's going on all around us. I think that's something important that we teach in sanctuary, is in that balance with the divine and with spirit, how to be able to maintain an energy field that actually is flexible in going through those spaces, so that you're safe and that you can process the energies and release them without having to take them on so much. It's not easy, I think, in the current world that we live in, especially because, as you say, those denser energies. But it's something that I think now more than ever, we must learn how to be able to do, because of the fact that we're being bombarded by so many.
Absolutely. I think both of us are fortunate to be able to live in spaces that are densely surrounded by nature. Like I live in the rainforest, you live in the rainforest, and I have a trip coming up to India now. I'm going to Mumbai, which is like the center of chaos in a sense. And it's one of the things I've had to learn over the last decade is learning how to be in the city again, because here it's like I just get to open up my energy field, receive all the energies from the nature. But the moment I go into the city, if I have this energy field, I will be saturated in a second with a lot of toxicity. So I did have to learn that skill of how to go to a city as dense as Mumbai and still feel great. And again, to know that that is possible, that we
Yeah.
we have those capabilities. Like our systems are so refined, they're so powerful that they can filter out things that are not meant for, but we have to train that, we have to learn that and even become aware about that.
Yeah. I think that's where the interface of spirit becomes so important. And I like to think, if you're right now, listening to this, you just imagine that where the world is going from physical matter into energy, there's a field of it, or an expression of it, where it's just all pure energy. And that pure energy field is what we describe of as the field of spirit. And within it, there's the different forces that you see. There's the spirit of the wind, the spirit of the air. You're breathing it. There's the spirit of the light. It's the different sources of light that give off light and create it. There's the spirit of the nature, wherever there's something living, including you, that represents your spirit. And as we become aware of that, we can start to communicate with that. And as we communicate with that nature of spirit, there's a lot of spirit in there that's available for us to help us and support us, and that it can be very protective of our energy when we're in places like great cities. And I feel the
Mhm.
same thing. When you're in the forest, you can open up and the whole forest can go right through you, and you don't
Mhm.
feel affected at all. Like you can be lying in a hammock and you hear the cacophony and the symphony of the sounds, and it can you feel it go right through your entire energy field. And in the areas here, the healers use it. They call it the force of life, or the force of nature. And they use it as a medicine. They use that to
Mhm.
help reset your vibrations, this great continuous song that is sung throughout the Amazon. Very different to that of like honking horns and the sounds that you get in sirens and stuff, the sounds that we hear inside cities.
Mhm. Yeah, I that's one of the things I don't understand is how people do ayahuasca in cities. Like for me, it's so I've not had that experience. I've had some psychedelics in cities, and for me, it was like an absolute no after that experience, that it's so important to have this beauty, this openness that I can just relax and let go and allow not just ayahuasca, but nature and life to heal me and to work through me.
But I think that's a great point. There's ayahuasca happening all over the world now, and I really ask for people to make it a point to come here to the Amazon to experience it.
Hmm.
It's not wrong to use it in other places, but come here at least once in your life. Make it a pilgrimage, or come once a year if you can, or once every few years, and experience the beautiful medicine in the forest itself, in its habitat, where it grows naturally, where it has, evolved and it lives. And you get a very different experience. I've had ceremonies in cities, and I've had it in other places that aren't the Amazon itself and in the Amazon. And I still think the Amazon is a great home for that medicine, and
Mm.
something that is really important for people who are interested in this to come and experience. It is truly unique and different.
Yeah, yeah, it's and it makes I've heard this because I've worked with many people who've done both experiences, and every time they just describe that you cannot even fathom the difference between doing it in a city where you have so many unnatural sounds going on and fears of like you're doing something illegal, you're doing something that who knows what can happen, and like coming back to where we started this, is that the importance of trust and safety is that when you can feel that deep trust and when you can just feel safe in your environment, your whole experience changes to such a profound level as compared to being in fear, uncertainty. I don't know if I can trust my facilitators, whatever. It's like all of that plays such a key role in that experience.
Yeah. And I really like the point you're bringing up around legality and a shift in your own consciousness around that. One of the things I share on our retreats here at Blue Morpho in the Amazon is that you are safe here. You are truly safe here. When you come to our sanctuary, you're safe. The center where we're located is safe. Where we are in the forest is safe. There's no violent crime. Those problems don't exist. The nature of the setting and everyone that's been set up to facilitate the ceremony knows how to do this and are well trained, and you're safe. And legally, it's allowed. And so there isn't any question that there's some kind of potential problem, even as, remote as it may seem, but that you lined up all of those variables so that you can just finally calm down, take that big deep breath, and just calm, all that fear out of the body so that you can go into that experience. And I found that being able to turn our fear off is the most important aspect or the most important variable to the medicine experience. There's an experience where you're in fear and all the visions come through that field, or there's one where you can turn the fear down and off. And then the entire experience is something unique because the fear inside us finally has an opportunity to settle down.
Yeah, it's so critical. Like for me, again, it's super critical when it comes to ayahuasca, but even going beyond ayahuasca, your connection to the divine is literally it's the foundation is trust. If you can open that channel, and that channel really only opens when you can turn off the pure channel. They are kind of exclusive. If you have pure, you kind of don't have trust. So, and if you are trusting, then what are you really fearing? So it's to understand, for people to understand that your experience is not as important about doing ayahuasca as how you're doing ayahuasca, where you're doing it from within you. If you do not feel safe with your facilitators, if you do not feel that trust, you don't have to rush into it. Just do it somewhere else. I've heard of some stories where people override the intuition. The intuition is telling them that this is not the place, this is not the person. But they go mental. They're like, no, I'll do it anyway. And it turns out to be a bad scarring experience. And also to make people realize that bad scarring experiences happen because people are not listening to their intuition. They're not listening to their fear, which is telling them this is not the right time, this is not the right place. You don't force something as important as sacred as ayahuasca. It's really like the calling. When it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. Again, to come into that level of trust that It will happen at the right time. This is not my last opportunity. It's again not that scarcity mindset of time is running out. I have to do ayahuasca now. No, there's plenty, abundant opportunity. Just relax, let go.
The calling, I think, is a big question, and people ask about that all the time. How do you know if you're called to the plant medicines? And I like to think that we could understand our calling as the need that we have for the ceremony itself, that we can feel that level of comfort. We can feel that pull to actually go have that experience. When we're asked, how do you know if you're with the right facilitator? It's a resonance. It's a vibration thing. And I always think you need to research the facilitators as much as you can and find ones that are credible. And once you find a group that are credible, and now there are enough out in the world that have, good reputations, you can find them. There's at least 10 or 20 places that, there's a lot of comments that people have gone to a lot to and stuff. But you then want to decide the resonance with that group or with that facilitator as well. So find first somebody credible and then find the resonance with them because not all the facilitators are the same. In fact, they're supposed to be very different and unique in their own right. And I like that here in the Amazon that if you found someone who is a médico vegetalista and they couldn't help you, you would go to another one until you found one that could help you. It wasn't expected that every single one was the same and each one would be able to help you. And so I think
Mhm.
that really applies here as well for people who are coming to have the ceremonies. Find a center that's credible and then see if what they're providing and what they're offering is of credibility for you and resonance for you.
Yeah, the other way to put it would be that the energy of the facilitator is part of the medicine, or
Mm.
it can be part of the poison. So choose them carefully.
That's
Or
a really good way
choose them wisely, not carefully, but choose them wisely. Like pay
to use a
attention to
word.
your intuition.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's such an important piece to understanding the experience. Another thing that's been coming up recently a lot is the idea of rites of passage and the
Mm.
importance to bring in rites of passage into our lives. And
Mhm.
so I'd just like to take this time to really, emphasize for people, especially in the Western life that doesn't have formalized rites of passage, like we have a graduation ceremony, but now what? Or you go get married. Well, now what? The next day you're married, but where was the preparation and where was the understanding of what comes next? And I think it's important for us to know that rites of passage aren't just a isolated experience, but really something that starts. It's a planting of a seed that starts a growth process through a life transition or life change. One of my real critiques of Western society was that there were all of these inevitable transitions in life that were considered in that society tragedies. Like death was a tragedy and everyone was going to die. Your pets were going to die. Your loved ones were going to die. And that's a tragedy that no one wants to look at or talk about. Or there was injury or illness. Injury or illness at some point in life was going to happen to everybody. And that was a tremendous tragedy. In terms of relationships, 50 to 50 plus percent were going to end in divorce of marriages, which was considered a tragedy, yet no understanding of what to do next. And then there were just the life transitions like becoming an adult or going through puberty, going through teenage years, becoming an adult, starting a career, etc. And I thought this is a real need and something we can facilitate on these kinds of retreats and or through spiritual development and plant medicines, but to bring a formalization and understanding to the need of rites of passage.
Absolutely. I love that you brought it up because that's something I have gone through in the last year, and it's now something I've started providing is the rite of passage into adulthood because I know, and I think you know that you can be 50 plus and you can still be a child. It's just a reality we live in that adulthood is not your age, it's not your external experience, but it's really like there is this maturing of consciousness, which very, very, very few people go through, unfortunately. And I I just feel like it's of such tremendous importance, again, like in this time in history, that it comes into the awareness that it's okay for you not to be an adult right now and to realize that you can mature into adulthood at any time with the guidance. Like one of the books I was reading recently was saying that there's two key elements to it. One is the setting that's created, but the more important is the wisdom of an elder who is there already, a
Mm.
frequency holder, someone who has matured into adulthood, because so many of our authority figures, unfortunately, are not real adults. Like they are pretty much children in adult bodies playing school games.
Yeah, this is a huge, I think, issue for the Western culture is that they're not maturing into adulthood. The culture is actually retarding the nature of the growth of an individual. And this
Mhm.
idea of a prolonged childhood in terms of an internal maturation is real. It's not happening. And so we're seeing 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds that have not actually had the opportunity within themselves to grow into that expression of adulthood. And I don't see that unilaterally there's a training for it. On the contrary, I see it's the opposite. There's a worshiping of youthfulness. So a desire to not actually go through that phase. That phase is seen as aging and that's somehow negative. But I think it's the actual opposite of that. I think you have to reorient that thought. You're not getting older in terms of age because you're becoming more mature. As you become more mature, you can make better decisions about aging, including all of the different ways that we can maintain and better treat ourselves and our health. I see a lot of people now in this internet culture presenting themselves in a way of trying to have that youthful body, like the 50-year-old person having the body of a 20-year-old, but they're on steroids to get it. And they're going to actually hurt themselves in the gym to look like that. They're going to hurt their joints. They're going to end up hurting themselves. There's going to end up being, again, one of those inevitable tragedies. And so I
Yeah.
think, that's a very important mindset to start helping people understand and then transition of rite of passage.
Yeah, that's definitely like one of my core focuses in the academy that I'm starting now in September is like be an adult. It's simplicity. Like we don't have to call it something fancy. It's not some advanced spirituality. Like first, just start by becoming an adult. Start there. And even to realize like that is simple, but it's not easy. It's quite a challenging process to grow out of our childhood tendencies. And yeah, it's fundamental. Without that, you can't really advance in spirituality in a sustainable way. You may make one leap, but you'll crash and burn pretty soon if you're coming from a childish place.
I think that's important to mention too in the plant medicine space that it's seen as a great accelerator, but if you're coming from a childish place with it, especially a place of attainment, that it's going to be a crash and burn. And to be
Mhm.
very careful with that and understanding about that because the idea of acceleration isn't just having the experience, but it's integrating the experience and knowing what to do with the experience. So there's, I
Yeah,
think, three processes. There's having the experience, and then there's integrating it, and then from there, it's actually bringing that into life and living from that place. I thought that, in my own spiritual development, I was going so quickly because of what I had found in my early 20s until the maturation phase lasted, you know, more than 15 years. And you're
Mhm.
still in it going like, wow, this is really quite a long process. No matter how fast we were going at the beginning, the nature of the maturation is a really long time to fully accept the not only the lessons that come through, but how to apply them to our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I'm beginning the third phase that you described is like I feel like the integration has taken place, but actually applying it in life now is where I'm at. And I'm excited for it because I finally feel like I'm operating from the right place. Because earlier it's just been a lot of this fantasy of like, wow, I have all of this great wisdom. It's not been integrated properly, nor is it ready to apply. But now it really feels like, the integration is solid and I'm excited to apply it. I'm excited to bring it out into the world.
Yeah, I like that. I
Yeah.
found solace in the idea that the evolution of spirit is that lifelong path.
Hmm.
And at first, I felt like I could get somewhere. But now
Yeah.
I realize that as you're applying it into your life, it's how you live. And so it's going to be with us through the entirety of our lives. And that to
Hmm.
me is now in my mindset, the biggest gift. So it's not
Hmm.
that I'm obtaining something because I accomplished something, but my accomplishments are adding up to how I understand the applicability of all of these lessons in life and how that ultimately lines up the next things that we do.
Yeah, I think like each step just keeps unlocking more
Mm,
power, more freedom, more potential. And it's to see that as the game. It's like it's not about getting to heaven. It's not about reaching the top of the ladder of success. It's like you just keep activating more potential and keep growing infinitely.
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think that's where again the night that beautiful idea of rite of passage comes in,
Mhm.
and that the rite of passage allows for that continuous activation,
Yeah.
and that you go through one kind of initiation and one kind of rite of passage, and then that can lead to another one in our lives. And
Hmm.
bringing it home to now is, I think, the greatest gift from this is to know that it's now, it's not after we die. It's
Hmm.
right now. And to take that back, don't let anybody put what's important to you into a future that's beyond this life. Bring it right
Hmm.
back into the heart of this life and make that the root of what's most important to our spirituality.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Hamilton, for everything you've shared. All your wisdom has been incredible. I loved the conversation, loved our flow. And are there any last words that you would like to leave us with?
Oh, just know that we're in the world too, that if you need guidance and help and support in any way, that we're here for you. Join our academy. And if you like and resonate with what we're talking about, continue learning. And I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to drop all the links in the description of the episode. So check it out and how you can find both Hamilton and me. And if you have any comments, you would love to see them on the video. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching. And until next time.